Will democracy survive the next couple of years?
And essentially, we are the same.
Can't have government choosing winners or losers.
There are so many needs that Minnesota has.
What people are saying they need right now.
Access to Democracy is made possible in part by a donation from Firefly Credit Union. Firefly is the new name of U.S. Federal Credit Union, which has proudly served the financial needs of the greater Twin Cities community since 1925. At Firefly, we guide our members forward and give them the power to chase dreams by delivering the financial solutions they need to get ahead. From checking accounts to mortgages, we'll light the way. We are Firefly Credit Union, and this is life illuminated. And Dr. Charles Crutchfield of award-winning Crutchfield Dermatology in Eagan. Acknowledged as one of the nation's best physicians, a Minnesota native who trained at the Mayo Clinic, Dr. Crutchfield personally treats all patients and states that experience counts and quality matters. Crutchfield Dermatology, look good, feel great, with beautiful skin.
Hello, welcome back to Access to Democracy. I am here, Holly Jenkins, as your guest host today, and I'm so happy to welcome two new guests. We have Eagan High School senior Miriam Lebowitz and School of Environmental Studies senior Josh Groven. Miriam and Josh are leaders at their high school for the Students Against Gun Violence movement. So welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for being here. You are part of the first generation to spend your entire school life, kindergarten through grade 12, with lockdown drills. How does that make you feel? What do you think of that whole concept?
Yeah, well, like you said, we've grown up with it. So to us, at least for me, it seems pretty normal. It's every year, once or twice a year, we're expected to do that sort of thing. If that doesn't happen, it's usually a little odd, and then they have to cram it in. But it's something that's just normal for us.
Explain, what do they do when there's a lockdown drill?
Sure. So usually there's an announcement that comes on over the PA system, and it'll say something, give a little context about what's going on so kids aren't too freaked out. And then we're all usually given instructions beforehand by a teacher to find a corner or an area that's shielded by a desk where you can't be seen, but like you kind of can be seen, but the safest area in the classroom. And then we're directed to go there and sit and kind of group up for a given period of time and wait until we hear another signal that says that the drill is over.
Okay. Now, after the Parkland shooting, which has really started this gun violence movement among students, how was it at school after that? How was it different after that one? There's been other mass shootings, but it was something about that Parkland shooting that really sparked students to start saying we've had enough.
I think the main difference sort of that I saw was a difference in approach to how they talked about the issue of gun control and how they talked about student safety. Whereas I think after a lot of other school shootings, people would talk about, there'd be like thoughts and prayers and talk about the severity of the issue or why the issue was occurring, but these students focused a lot on like cold hard facts and statistics, and a lot of them were debate and speech kids, and they used a lot of those debate skills to have real substantive arguments about the issues of gun control, whereas which I think moved it away from sort of more emotional reactions and such and moved it into very politically and directly associated action that hadn't been seen before, especially among the students.
So you think that movement was based on the kids' reaction, not what the adults did in response to that one, because for decades, adults have been arguing this case, but it's this next generation that's really bringing a whole new level of discussion to the issue. One of a lot of emphasis, especially after that last mass shooting, has come down to mental health. Mental health and treatment for mental health instead of gun legislation. How much validity do you give that issue versus gun legislation as a means to decrease gun violence?
Well, personally, I don't think that those things are exclusionary. I think on one hand, mental health is something that we do have to obviously address and is one of many facets of the problem that leads to gun violence. But when people say that we should do that instead of any form of gun control is when it crosses the border into an argument that just doesn't make sense. Because when we haven't tried certain gun control measures whatsoever, but we have tried to solve mental health for, hundreds of years in this country, I think we need to understand that that is one part of the problem, but we need to also address it on the legislative and political level.
Right.
And so that addressing both of those things simultaneously is the only way that it's actually going to lead to change.
Yeah. Yeah. Is that anything to add to that?
I would say that it's a very similar response to what I would have said. I definitely think mental health issues are definitely very relevant. We need to talk to them about them. But at the same time, many of the shootings that have occurred, not all of them are related to mental health. And so tackling that aspect, that's not the change that we actually need to make a difference and reduce the amount of shootings that are happening.
So do you think that's a concerted effort by gun owners, by the NRA, to try to just take people down the wrong path, or it's just, like you say, it has to be both? What is the barrier to doing both? Is it the NRA? Is it the legislators? Is it genuinely people who own guns? Where is this barrier that doesn't see it has to be both? If that's...
I think, unfortunately, a lot of it is due to polarization in the political scheme and among people personally when they talk about their political views, where the people more on the left will hear the conservative side bring up the mental health argument and will immediately be like, no, that is completely illegitimate, and will say we only need gun control bills, whereas the side of the right will say the exact opposite about what the liberals would say. And I think that leads to no progress being done, because when neither side actually understands that they need to compromise, then mental health won't be fixed or solved, and gun control won't be fixed or solved. And so we need to understand that we need to do both of those things at the same time, otherwise both sides will not reach any kind of progress.
And I'd say the other problem with bringing up mental health issues in relation to the gun control discussions is that it makes the mental health issues, it kind of diminishes them a little bit. People who have mental health issues, that is a huge thing. It is something that is very relevant. And to then connect it with gun control, to some extent, it criminalizes them, it makes them look bad, it makes mental health look like a horrible thing, and people who have mental health issues, they can't control it. And so I think it's definitely important that we tackle mental health issues in schools, but not in relation with the gun control.
Yeah, that is a really good point, that by combining the two, you've now diminished the really bigger problem for mental health, which needs to be addressed, and now you've just tried to neglect the rest of mental health issues that need to be considered. Wow, that's excellent. How do you feel, so many of the argument also, in addition to the mental health, is that teachers should be armed, or there should be armed guards at school. What's your view on that idea? Would you feel safer if your teachers had guns?
Absolutely not.
Yeah.
Actually, I was just talking about this at my dinner table last night. We were talking about, let's say everyone in a school now has a gun. How can you expect people to be a judge of a certain situation? Because once one person pulls out a gun, starts shooting, they are then criminalized. Someone else may pull out a gun, start shooting at them. Where does it stop? The other thing with that I like to point out is, so I actually teach at my synagogue, and when this first happened, I immediately was hit, because on the one side, I'm a student at a high school. This could happen to me, I could be shot, and on the other hand, this could happen somewhere where I'm teaching. How do I protect my students? And from that perspective as well, for people who are bringing up that argument, I don't think people would want me to have a gun. I know I don't want to have a gun. I know I've talked to teachers who, I've asked them, how would you react to that? And they are not comfortable with that. That's not what their job is. That's not what they were hired for. That's not what they went to school for. It's not necessary.
Yeah, and I'll just add to that, and to be trained for that type of crises, it takes ongoing training. And
yes.
I'm pretty sure that teachers have a full plate trying to do their jobs as well as they can. And that's almost another full-time job, to be trained for a crises mode. I don't think that you can just take a 3-day course and now be ready. And just like you said, what's to prevent somebody from reacting out of fear, in a sense, and that opens the door to so many more problems. So Miriam, let me ask you, you organized the Eagan High School walkout. So it was a month after Parkland school shooting that there was a nationwide walkout. How did you find yourself in the position to be organizing this? And just share how that kind of all came about.
Well, we had seen in the news about what had happened in Florida, and I'd been talking to my dad about it, and he was very encouraging, and he was like, I think that you need to participate in this, and I was like, I want to do some more research, and I started investigating and looking at these articles and seeing what happened, and I was like, oh, I'm definitely getting involved in this. But I was very concerned. About a month prior, I had actually gone to DC and I had done some lobbying, and it was very clear when I had done that, that as an individual, as a teen, I didn't feel like I had much of a voice. I didn't feel like my representatives really listened to me. And so I knew going in that the way that we went about doing the walkout had to be very adult and it had to be very mature. So I wanted to make sure that engaging in that wasn't gonna involve in me being penalized or have graduation delayed or anything. So I reached out to a teacher that I used to have who's now retired, and she was so supportive. She was like, I'm so happy that you're getting involved in this, but because I'm not working at your school anymore, there's not a lot that I can actually do to help you.
Okay.
So I turned to my homeroom teacher and I talked to him, and I walked into homeroom the Monday after this all happened, and he goes, I'm gonna go talk to the principal. And I go, can I come with you? And he goes, yeah. Went to the principal, asked her about it, and she goes, you can absolutely do this. If I have any say about it, I will be the first one out there with you. And invited me to a meeting with someone else who was also thinking about organizing things. We got in contact, and then we were asked to wait. The principal needed to go to a meeting to see what the district policy was going to be.
Okay.
Someone created a social media account, and we were immediately like, hey, like, we're organizing this, we've been in contact with people, do you want to unite forces so we're not giving mixed signals? And it just happened, and 6 of us got together and we started talking and we organized it.
Well done. I actually happened to attend the Eagan one, and I was able to hear your presentation, and your message was so articulate and so spot on, and so I just want to congratulate you, because I think that's not easy to do, and it takes a lot of effort, and so thank you for doing that.
Absolutely.
In fact, your principal was out there, the mayor of Eagan was out there, our state rep from that area came, so it was quite touching, and knowing that you guys have been through this for 12 years and now you're the voices speaking up that you've had enough is pretty incredible to watch. So shortly after that protest, there was a letter to the editor that appeared in the local Eagan paper, and I'll just read from it. The writer states, I thought it was shameful to use children for political agendas that they don't understand by filling them with exaggerated fears and anger and encouraging them to break school rules. You saw that because it's in the local paper. How did that make you feel, and how would you respond to this? Because I think that it reflects a feeling a lot of people have. So your high school teachers clearly were supportive, but others who don't know these students seem to feel that they don't quite know what they're doing. So how do you address something like that?
Yeah, so when I saw that article, I was very upset to see it, and then I started breaking it down a little bit. So if you go on, I think one of the following paragraphs, there's a line about there's no way that teens could have done this. This had to be professional protesters, to which I'd like to say, like, thank you. I think I did a very professional job as well. Like, I appreciate that. Yeah. But the whole idea that teens can't make this decision, that they can't think about this, we have so much access now with the internet to different news sources. We're constantly having discussions in class about looking at sources and being critical of them, and questioning the accuracy of them and whatnot. Like, we are fully capable of making decisions. I was actually, like I said before, I'm a teacher, and I've been talking to kids who are much younger than I am, and getting their opinions about it and seeing how they react. And we definitely, like, we've grown up with this. Like, we're used to it. We can definitely form our own opinions about it.
Yeah. Well, I am always very impressed whenever I attend some of the high school. It's different than when I went to high school. You guys are exposed to so much more reality and just truth, and farther along in so many aspects. And so to think that you can't manage to coordinate something like that, I think you deserve better respect than that. Josh, now you organize the School of Environmental Studies. How did you find yourself in that leadership position?
Well, initially, when we organized the SES walkout, I wasn't as much of the singular leader in that case. A couple other of my friends at the time also brought up the idea of having a walkout. And so when we sort of got together and did that, we collectively organized that walkout and then unified it with Apple Valley's walkout and Prior Lake's walkout. And so we combined all three of those schools to meet up in the front of Apple Valley High School. And so I found myself, I guess, in that position just because the majority of us thought, hey, we should participate in this walkout as well, and we think this is a necessary time to do this, and it would be an important demonstration. But following that, I guess, when I became more fell into my own sort of leadership position was leading the sit-in that following week. And so sort of the walkout inspired me to lead that kind of sit-in because when I was there at that walkout, I thought, this is awesome and this is a fantastic demonstration of student power, but at the same time, this is removed from the politicians that we're trying to address and that we're trying to talk to. And we can be out here and they can see us on the cameras on the television, but they can still sit at home or sit at the Capitol and we're not going to be saying this to their face. So that's sort of what inspired me afterwards to organize the sit-in at the Capitol.
Okay, and so tell me how that all came about. How did it, did you have some assistance planning that with adults? Did you just talk to other students who agreed with your position and said, we're going? Did you have to take days off school? Time off school.
Yeah, no, I organized that basically over a week, just basically talking to a majority of my friends and connections that I knew at the time, most of which had already participated in the walkout previously, and then basically just networking out to find a lot of people in various communities to come and organize, and we ended up getting about 22 people to attend the sit-in on that day. And everyone got excused absences from their parents a lot of the time. A lot of the people at the Capitol tried to sort of trivialize what we were doing by asking if, oh, are you skipping school to be here? And we would always say, no, we got permission to be here. We're very intentionally here. And so, yeah, organized that basically by networking out. And it was primarily all organized by us. We ran a couple things by my parents and Senator Matt Little to check basically the legislative legitimacy of what we were trying to do, especially when we interrupted the hearing, because we wanted to make sure that we weren't breaking any rules to the point that it would give us a bad image beyond what we were looking for. And so we did basically, I guess, ask for advice, but past that, there was not any other assistance from adults.
Which is very smart to do. You don't want to get yourself caught. And so you found out what you did was very legal, allowed. So you sat in his office, talked to him. How did he make you feel? Was he listening? Was he, and this is the chair of the Judiciary Committee.
Yep, of the Safety Committee.
So it'd be the one that should be hearing the bills.
Yep, the Public Safety Committee.
And so his response to you coming to visit him in his office was, thanks, now go back to school?
Yeah, essentially. I mean, he did actually engage with us on debating a lot of the topics at the time, but the arguments that he was using was basically the same recycled arguments that politicians like him have been using for literally decades by this point, which was just sort of saying that we're caught up in an emotional moment, or that we're skipping school, or things like gun laws won't prevent anything, and lots of arguments that have now been proven over a long period of time to not hold much logical weight in the form that they have just been basically thrown out almost as sort of stock statements to say when confronted with the gun control issue. And so even though he did hypothetically engage with us on the debate, the same arguments he was using were just demeaning, and his tone was very dismissive and sort of derogatory. So,
and your request at that time was to have these bills heard, and so he basically wasn't going to let that happen, and so your next step was to go into a committee hearing.
Yep.
And that happened on the same day?
Yep, this was all in the same. We ended up being at the Capitol for 13 hours for the majority of that day. And so after he didn't agree to schedule any meeting for these hearings, we decided to go to the committee itself and talk to the rest of the members of the committee as well as the audience. And so we went into the podium and requested that these bills were heard. And a lot of people afterwards framed it as if we were saying they should get heard right then in that moment. But we were asking them to be respectful to these bills, which have been brought up and proposed to the committee over and over and over again, and basically fulfill the basic function of democracy, which is, I think, just to let the opinions of the people and of the politicians be heard. And so that's what we ended up requesting at that podium, and that led to Senator Limmer gaveling us down, telling us we were out of order, and then security officers coming up behind us and escorting us out by our arm out to the outside of the room. So,
well, that was, I've sat through numerous committee hearings. I've never seen anything like that, and I think that most people haven't, and that's why it ended up being picked up by the Associated Press. And it wasn't just in our local news or state news, but if you Google this issue, that story of being shut down and escorted out made it all the way to Seattle and other states. So that was a remarkable effort that you made. And have you talked to him since?
We haven't contacted him since. We've been planning ways to do that or to contact others. Sort of the goal is to go back and contact other representatives and senators that we think would have sort of linchpin positions, because we picked him specifically because he is the head of the Public Safety Committee, and that is the committee that would hear gun control bills. So if we had to pick another person, it would most likely be Paul Gazelka, who's the majority leader. And so really our goal was to make it a very specific, pinpointed sort of approach. And so if when we do go back, we will definitely either follow him again or some other politician we think has a very specific position in the whole debate.
And this could be open to either of you, if you were to say something to him at this point, or are you anything special, a message you'd pass along?
I guess for me, this specific thing, I would not only say to him, but to many politicians like him that are holding the same position, is basically that they need to remember who they are, I think. And as politicians, their job is to represent the people and the citizens that they represent and were elected by. And when a majority of studies have now proven that a large majority of Americans and even a large majority of gun owners support some kind of gun control and some kind of background check, and not even that is being heard by the politicians, it reaches a point where they're no longer upholding their end of the bargain, essentially. And that's sort of when we get to the vote them out kind of phrase, where if they're not going to listen to us and they're not going to fulfill their job, then they will be removed and replaced with people that will. So.
That's how it will hopefully work.
Yeah.
That's how it should work.
Exactly.
How has this, you're incredibly knowledgeable about this process and the individuals, the actual politicians and the positions that they hold at the Capitol, which is, again, something not many people know about. So how has this whole process, you guys firsthand experience now on what it's like to be engaged in a political process, how does it make you feel about our, I think you kind of started it, about our representative democracy? Has this made you feel somewhat defeated that you step down, or does it energize you to keep fighting for the values that you have?
I would say a little bit of both. So I personally haven't lobbied on this particular issue yet, but I did lobby earlier this year on behalf of DACA. And when I talked to the legislative director of Jason Lewis, and in the moment walking out, I was absolutely horrified. I was totally crushed. I appreciated that she had made time to meet with me. We did sit down and have a conversation. But like I said before, I felt like I wasn't listened to at all. I felt because I was one person, I was a high school student, that my voice really didn't matter. And I walked out and I was talking, I met up with some other kids who were lobbying along with me, and they all had relatively good experiences when they were talking to their representatives. They seemed receptive. And I walked in there saying, I didn't feel like my message was received at all. I didn't feel like she listened to me whatsoever, and it was very frustrating. But then walking out of there, I was like, I can't stop here. I need to continue, and it was definitely a motivator. So I'd say in the moment, it hurts. It hurts anytime, even in a normal conversation, to have someone clearly not actually be listening to you. It hurts. But going forward and afterwards and reflecting on it, it was definitely a big motivator in getting involved with this movement.
Okay. Has it given either of you a little interest in moving into politics as you get older? Do you think you would want to ever run for office, or do you think advocacy is the right way to influence change?
I think for me personally, I was more interested at one point in reaching political office, and I think the more I've gotten involved with this, the more I've sort of realized the bureaucracy, I guess, of these kinds of systems. Not even in necessarily a negative light, but that's part of the process, and that trying to organize that large amount of people representing an even larger amount of people is going to be difficult to do, and is going to require a lot of compromise to the point of not really being able to ever get fully what you would want. So I think for my personal position, I probably would move more in the advocacy, activism kind of sphere, just because I think that's the best way for me and my peers to be able to express our personal opinions in a way that can be heard on a large scale.
And I would say going into college, I'll definitely continue on the advocacy route. And then I think once I have a little better idea of more topics in the world and get more perspectives and whatnot, so I can just be a better representative myself when I'm talking and I'm lobbying, then I may consider running for office in the future.
That's excellent. I just commend you, because I think part of the reason it's gotten to the point it has is because people have become disengaged. It's hard. It's a marathon to fight for these values that you have, and it's gotten to the point where people just have, I want to say, nothing I can do about it. But you're giving this next generation is bringing so much more hope, and that's going to change. And let me tell you that on this issue alone, the gun control, as I said earlier, adults have been fighting for this for decades. But boy, I think you will be welcomed strongly with open arms. They are ready for some reinforcement. So thank you for bringing that.
Absolutely.
And whatever your issues are, just fighting for your values is what this is all about. It's what democracy is built on. So stay involved, stay engaged. I think you will. So it'll be fun to see where you end up. We have just a couple minutes left. Do either of you have some thoughts, any last messages or points that you want to make sure viewers hear from you?
Sure. I would say that one of the big things for people on both sides of the debate is that it's really important to talk to people, not only people who agree with you, but also people who don't. And also looking at news sources that you don't necessarily agree with to see what the other side is saying. And it's really important in those conversations. Obviously, we all want our voice to be heard. We all want to talk. But it's really important to also take a step back and listen. And also to make these conversations personal. We have gotten a lot of criticism. People are saying that we're teens. We're coming out of this out of being too emotional. You mentioned that earlier. But emotion is a big part of this. This is definitely like our safety is being threatened, and there's no reason why our emotions wouldn't be arising in that conversation. So just listening and considering all of those things and making it personal is very important.
Thank you. 10 seconds.
Yeah, I'll go really, I really echo that you need to talk to people on both sides, as well as I think personally just research, knowledge, and actually having the real data about issues like this, I think is also immensely important and something that can change the debate if everyone was well informed.
And will you be 18 in November?
Yes.
Yes.
And will you vote?
Absolutely.
For sure.
And tell others to vote?
Yes.
Oh, definitely.
I have no doubt. So thank you so much for coming on. It's been wonderful
you.
talking with you. It'll be fun to follow this issue, and maybe we'll see you back here another time.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time on it.